an opportunity here to provide leadership, support, and a voice to the voiceless. The sacrifices that we made during our service do not end here. We carry on. We push forward, and we give hope and inspiration through love, community, and support. Stay free.
Rights and freedoms in this country are absolutely everything to me, because I personally know the sacrifice required in order to get them back once they're gone. So when my brothers and sisters call Stand 2, be sure I'll be there.
Legacy media will play their games, right? Like, this isn't about this or that. This is about freedom, period.
The only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. Brothers and sisters in uniform, whether you're a police officer, military, check your hearts. Look where we're going. Man, wake up. I beg you.
If the veterans can't stand up and get a message across to the government, I don't know who can. I don't know. But we're going to give it our best shot. And I think we have a chance to win this and do it. But we need your help. And we need you to come, and we need you to stand too. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll talk again soon.
Got a sunburn to peel the daggers off your tongue. Young and dumb, I'm rotting like a bed sore in a cold case that's never gonna be more than scratching at the walls while you're waiting for a bullet to come. All along I've been treading in the deep end, throw my mirror in the cupboard for the weekend. Try and put together pieces while I'm dreaming, but nothing's adding up to a thing but a hole in the head.
Woke pirates, yes they're robbing, sold out to the merchant ships. Minutes after they took out from the bottomless pit, my head was made strong by the hand of the Almighty. We forward in this generation triumphantly. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? It's all I ever have. Redemption songs, redemption songs. Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Oh, have no fear for atomic energy, 'cause none of them can stop the time? How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? Some say it's just a part of it, got to fulfill the book. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? It's all I ever have. Redemption songs, redemption songs, redemption songs. Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Oh, have no fear for atomic energy, 'cause none of them can stop the time. How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? Some say it's just a part of it, got to fulfill the book. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? It's all I ever have. Redemption songs, redemption songs. It's all I ever have. Redemption songs, redemption songs, redemption songs.
Hey, what's up, troops? It's Jeff Evely here, the Magnanimous GenX'er Male. Back with you now on this 11th day of July, 2024. Got a great show lined up for you here. Sarah Choujouian is backstage, ladies and gentlemen, and she is facing disciplinary action from the CNO. So that's the College of Nursing for Ontario, for taking a stand during the pandemic. So I'm going to be really interested to hear her story. And she was on the stand there last week. So things are really kind of coming to a head at this moment. And I think it's a really good time to bring her in for a chat. So we're looking forward to that. But before I bring her in, I will go ahead and say good evening to everybody who joined us here. Dwayne is over on Rumble, and he's saying evening, Jeff. Evening to you, Dwayne. Thanks for always being with us, brother. I was a little late with the Rumble stream here this evening. I think I kind of... I may have dropped the ball on that one a little bit, but I got her up and going just in time for us to go live. So here is Marion, and she says, good evening, everyone from Barrie, Ontario. Oh, unterrible. My commiserations, Marion, but thanks for being with us. Rob is saying, first one on the board. Good afternoon, evening, Patriots. Well, you're the first one on YouTube, Rob, so appreciate appreciate you being here. And Daisy is in the house, ladies and gentlemen. He says, this is important stuff. Shared. Yeah, thanks, Daisy. I appreciate it. And everybody, please share this out. I need all the top cover I can get because, as you all know, I am the worst guy for not promoting my own stuff. And Patricia is here saying hello and gives us hearts. Hello to you, Patricia. Holly says, good evening, everyone. And she has shared it out. IG Eastwood. Hey, how you doing, brother? He says, shared. Thanks, brother. Thank you. I appreciate it. And Ann Independence says, hey, Jeff and everyone. It's been a while. And she says, I'm Susan is here on Facebook. Okay, right on. I got you now. Susan, thanks for being with us. And yeah, I was on a bit of a hiatus there as I was doing some traveling around and taking care of some other stuff. But I came back like last week, and I've been saying I probably won't be doing like the 5 shows per week like I was before for a little while, because we're kind of juggling a lot of different priorities, in this fight right now. I got some court cases and stuff coming up, so all I can do is all I can do. And Evelyn says, hello all. Hello to you, Evelyn. Thanks for being with us. Debbie says, good afternoon from Tabor, Alberta. Thomas is saying, hey, Jeff, hey, brothers, and thanks, Daisy. If you let Neil know, I was trying to get in touch. Oh, yeah, I'd like to talk to Neil, too. I reached out to him a few days ago there, but he hasn't gotten back yet. I'm sure he's a really busy guy. But yeah, I'd like to hear how everything went for Rolling Thunder. And Cindy, our most faithful of all watchers, says, hey, Jeff, and she's giving us the hearts. Have to catch the replay, taking my niece out for her birthday. Have a great show. #winning. Thanks very much, and enjoy your time out with family. And Susan is here, is also on Facebook, saying, hey, Jeff and everyone. I was on X. Okay, right on. And Stephen is saying, Trenton in the house. Okay, guys, I don't want to leave Sarah waiting for too long here. I'll go ahead and do our quick philosophy quote for the day. This is Florence Nightingale, who professionalized the nursing occupation and founded the first college for nurses in England there somewhere. And I think she actually became famous for a lot of the care that she provided during the Crimean War, and probably saved a lot of lives just with, improved sanitation and stuff like that. So anyway, this is Florence Nightingale, and she says, quote, I think one's feelings waste themselves in words. They ought to be distilled into actions which bring results. I resemble that remark. I always, it really is about actions, guys. Deeds, not words, as we often say in the military. I think that's the slogan for JTF2, actually, the Can't Softcom guys. Deeds, not words. So definitely some good advice there. And so that's an old quote. And here is our meme for this evening. And this is a picture. I don't know. Somebody's done a good alteration here, but it looks like a gate into a town, and the sign on the top of the gate says, "Vaccines will make you free." That was the tact that they took during the pandemic. All of a sudden, we weren't free, but all you have to do is take this vaccine, and you will be free. It's a coercive tactic, of course, and that is the line that was crossed during the pandemic. Is what we like, because what we mean when we say a free country is that it is free of coercion. Do as you will, but don't harm another, as they used to say in the ancient Roman Empire. That's what, in principle, I think freedom is all about. Okay, folks, I'm not going to leave Sarah waiting any longer here. She's been very patient with me backstage here, so I'll go ahead and bring her in now. Sarah, how you doing this evening? Great to have you on board.
I'm great. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. And so you've been really busy since all of this started. And I kind of captured, the basics in the bio that I wrote for the description here. But I usually give everybody a chance to kind of tell their story, just, a little bit about your awakening and what you've been up to and all of this. So if you don't mind, just give us a little bit of a backgrounder there, and just kind of tell us your own story.
Okay, great. I'll try to make it short, which never happens, but
No worries.
My story kind of starts in 2017, actually, because I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia. And for a year and a half before that, they couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. And so, a lot of people don't know what fibromyalgia is, but I was exhausted, like literally holding my arm up was exhausting. And I had so much pain, but also I had so much other symptoms that were coming up. They thought I had endometriosis. They thought I had rheumatoid arthritis. They thought I had bladder issues. I was having memory loss. I started having problems swallowing. I felt bugs on my skin. Like, it was just crazy. And it was just getting worse and worse, memory loss. And my doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. And they were like, well, maybe it's all in your head. And I was like, I'm a single mom of 3, and I was missing work, and I was in a lot of debt. So I decided to do my own research, and I found out about fibromyalgia and how it's something that's all about toxicity. And toxicity is anything that causes inflammation in your body or causes stress and gets the fight or flight going, and your hormones all coming out. And so, it disrupts a lot of things. And so anything that causes that, so it could be food, it could be in the water, it could be in the air, and medications, synthesized stuff. But most importantly, trapped emotions and unresolved trauma. And I knew I had a lot of that. And so that made a lot of sense for me. But around the same time, my doctor had referred me to a neurologist, and I was actually diagnosed with fibromyalgia. And there's not really any tests. They kind of like were like, how long you've been having pain? Oh, over 6 months. Okay. And they press on, a few pressure points, and they're like, oh yeah, fibromyalgia. And so what they do though, and what happens is that people are not aware, and this is a problem, is that in Canada, fibromyalgia is known to can possibly become a long-term disability. And so what happens is that they don't really know how, there's no cure, and they don't really understand it, so they say. And so what they do is they give you band-aid medications, so like painkillers, sleeping pills, hormones, right? And I was like, but that just causes more toxicity. And people don't know. And so at first, you take the medications because you really want to feel better. Like, I totally get it. I could hardly move in the morning. It took me like 10 minutes to get my joints going. And so people take the medications, and at first they feel better, but then they become tolerant, and they need a higher dose and a higher dose until you can't get a higher dose. And it's a long-term disability because, you haven't gone to the root cause. So I said, no, I'm not doing that. And I got help. So I went to the Gatehouse, which is a safe space for adult survivors of sexual abuse. And there I found out I was super normal for everything I had gone through. And so a lot of my shame dropped, and I was able to start accepting myself and forgiving myself for all the stuff I put myself through. And, and started loving myself. And so I got sober. I started going to the gym. I lost 60 pounds. I started eating organic foods. But most importantly, I learned to stand in my truth and stop sacrificing and betraying myself for others. And, really putting the blame back where it is, and, really standing in my truth and going from there. And so within a year, I literally had no more fibromyalgia. Actually, I was in the best shape of my life, no symptoms whatsoever. I had drank for most of my life and smoked a lot of weed. So I was completely sober. And I started facilitating because I loved the program so much. And I started noticing that a lot of people with trauma have somatic illnesses. And I was telling them what I did because they were having the same problems with the medical industry, and it was helping them. So I got excited, and I was like, this is my life purpose. And so I founded Lighting Up Dark Corners. This is like beginning of 2019 now. And so, but it kind of took the back burner because, I was a nurse. I had 2 jobs, single mom of 3. And it's like the income was comfortable, even though it wasn't enough. And so, I just kept doing what I was doing. And then the pandemic hit. And so that was everything. That messed up everything for me and everybody, obviously.
Before you get into that,
Yeah.
a friend of mine told me that I have to ask you how you cured your fibromyalgia, or whether you're willing to share that with us. It sounds like you're talking a lot about unresolved trauma, but by all means, I'd like to hear it from you.
Yes. And unresolved trauma causes us to adapt with a lot of coping mechanisms that are harmful for us. So I drank a lot, I smoked a lot of weed, I ate a lot of sugar, and I just overate. And so it's a lot of toxicity in your body. But fibromyalgia is a problem of the central nervous system. So it's because your fight or flight is being triggered too often, and your body can't go into rest and digest. And so you start having problems with digestion, like leaky gut, and things leak into your blood. And so it's toxicity. Emotions, same thing. They get trapped, and it just causes tension in the body. We hold our breath, we armor. All these things cause so much stress on the body. Fibromyalgia is the body that too much stress, too much toxicity. So it's important to slowly, step by step, remove things from your life that are not serving you. And this includes medications and vaccines, like detoxifying and things like that. It's really one day at a time. And, I had to push myself a little bit to move because I couldn't move. Even walking 10 minutes would wipe me out for the next 24 hours. But I pushed myself through it. And I actually have a workshop on my website that's called How to Recover from Fibromyalgia, for those who are interested. But I also run a free workshop called How to Stand in Your Truth that helps you with the emotional and trauma part of it.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. I've watched a couple of your videos when you're talking about this, but yeah, this I think is a really important subject for a lot of people out there. So if you don't mind, maybe just give us the overview of the workshop and how people maybe how they can maybe touch base with you also. But yeah, what is it that how do you approach this? I guess with your workshops.
So it's really like helping people like how you can sleep better, because your central nervous system, people don't realize, and that's a big problem with fibromyalgia, is that you can't recover, right? If your central nervous system is always in fight or flight, you can't rest. So you don't have the growth hormones to help you recover while you're sleeping. And so, for example, so that's a big part of fibromyalgia. It's a big problem for people with trauma. And so there's a part where, I help with the rest part. What can you do? And it's all natural. Like even at this point, like I don't put any chemical products on my skin. So I just really talk about like, how to, recover and restore your body, and with what vitamins. And it's quite simple, actually. But it's, people have to actually hear it and see it. And I kind of plugged in my story as I moved along in it, because, there's a lot of things that are important. For example, they told me that, I always liked doing weightlifting, and definitely couldn't do that at that point, and started with like walking and swimming, but they were like, oh, you'll never do weights again. But in my recovery, actually weights were a big part of it. Slowly, as I gained strength, I slowly started doing, very light weights, but weights and stretching, because stretching the fascia, and I talk about this in my workshop, is extremely important. So things like even just like yoga, like just stretching your body is really important. And so as I did weights, I would stretch my body in between, but also, I was aware of my breath. And so it helped me with my breathing. And I really incorporated all this, and I got really strong. And, I do weights every day. I actually do boxing now. And that's something like with high impact things with fibromyalgia, like I never thought, because you feel pain literally like 10, 20, sometimes 50 times more than what you would feel if you didn't have fibromyalgia. So it's exhausting.
Yeah, I would echo exactly what you're saying. Yoga, there's probably nothing better for you. Just getting out there and stretching a little bit. I do the hot yoga. Yeah.
And really being aware, like I talk about the pause a lot, and, I talk about it with triggers, but really people with fibromyalgia, I tell people learn to do the pause, and a lot of it is trauma based, and trauma is anything that disconnect you from yourself. And so we're very disconnected mind and body. And so I tell people learn to do check-ins all the time with yourself. One, make sure you're breathing, because a lot of us are not, and that causes stress in the body. And even like I held my breath all the time. And also, or we're breathing shallow from the chest. We're supposed to breathe into our gut, right? So breathing is very important. So I tell people, you do a check-in, first check that you're breathing. How's your breathing? Take a few breaths. Second, do a body scan. Are you holding tension anywhere? Are you clenching your jaws? Oh, thank you. Are you armoring your shoulders, and the neck are a big one, right? Let go of that tension, release it. And, in the beginning, I couldn't even release my jaw. It took me a few months, and that's okay. If that happens to you, that's kind of normal. If you've been doing it for like 20, 40 years, it's kind of hard to let go. And then I tell people, ask yourself, is there something that I need to be stressed of right now? If not, go back to the present and put whatever emotion that you noticed that you had on the back burner, and go back to it later, maybe in the evening, and journal about it. We have to start learning to be aware of who we are, what we need. And so it's all about reconnecting. So that's a really big thing for fibromyalgia, the breathing and to let go of that tension, because it causes a lot of problems.
Yeah, 1,000%. I mean, I think you're really kind of, singing my song here right now. Actually, I talk a lot about just mindfulness, and I say that I'm an amateur an amateur student of Stoicism, of philosophy, and journalism is a really prominent feature, especially in Stoicism. This seems like it's something that our ancestors knew, and we've lost touch with. Really, really interesting, really resonating with me.
Yes.
And sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I just said yes.
Oh, okay. Okay. And so you've got like the work on me, or work with me one-on-one. So you do like one-on-one coaching for this kind of thing, I gather.
Yes. Childhood trauma and fibromyalgia. I kind of put both in the same boat. I think I say childhood trauma, but everyone, I always tell people, because people think childhood trauma has to be like you've been battered and sexually abused or something like that. And it's really not that. We all have trauma. I tell people trauma is a part of life. The problem that we have in our system, in our egocentric system, is that we don't learn to look at our trauma and transcend it into wisdom in order for it to have a purpose in our lives, right? And I forgot where I was going with that.
I'll throw in that I love that you said that. I saw that in one of your videos while I was prepping for the show too, is the transforming the trauma into wisdom. I think that's an excellent way to look at it. I usually say take that negative and turn it into a positive. And I might point to an example like, say, Chester Bennington, the singer who committed suicide a few years ago. And he just, something obviously happened to that guy a lot in his childhood, just based on, the lyrics and the music that he made with Linkin Park. But whatever it was that happened to him, he sure managed to turn it into some beautiful music. And I think that that is kind of healing in a way. Unfortunately, not enough for him, I don't think, in his case. This idea that you transform your trauma into wisdom. Could you maybe elaborate on that a little bit for us?
Let me see. Well, for example, so let me keep going on the line I was going. So I was going to explain that childhood trauma, it doesn't have to be a huge thing. Actually, trauma is a part of life. So everybody has it. We all have it. We all need to go back and look at what's happening. So for example, trauma is, again, anything that disconnects from yourself, and for kids, anything that wounds you, you dissociate from it, right? As children, we're expert dissociators. And so we just take that part or that wound and we put it on the outside. But that wound can be anything. And it doesn't mean that people are like, well, I don't want to say that. It means my parents were bad. No, it has nothing to do with that. Our parents might have done their best. So an example is there's this only child, 4 years old, and his mom has a new baby. And she's now paying a lot more attention to the baby, obviously, because the baby needs more attention. But this 4-year-old child is internalizing that they're no longer lovable and that they're not enough or not worthy. And you integrate this kind of wound into, your belief system, and you bring this with you all your life subconsciously. And then it affects everything, right? You think you're not good enough, so you don't go for that career, that dream career, or you settle in relationships, or you have addictions and things like that. And so it's important to go back and look at this and understand it from the perspective of the child. And if there was needs that weren't met, meet these needs in order to, again, transform that pain now into wisdom. You know who you really are once you've looked at yourself. And so that pain can become a strength.
Yeah,
that properly, but
no, I think you did. It's we're growing through adversity, I guess. That's kind of the point. It's not so much the adversity as it is the personal growth. So I would perhaps treat it like that. And I'd also add that, I think I resemble that remark. So I'm really relating to a lot of what you said.
Yes.
I understand that you just from some of the other videos that I watched, you share a little about your own story and your own trauma, and stuff like that. And I guess if you're comfortable with that, would you mind maybe just relating a little bit of that for the audience?
Absolutely. I actually love that. It's called Lighting Up Dark Corners because my mission and my kind of way of doing this is by making myself very vulnerable and raw and sharing my story so that others can see that, their shame could drop and they can see that it's okay to let it out and share it in a safe environment, obviously. And so I think that that's really important. And I forgot where I was going again. Sorry, I'm distracted by my website.
That's okay.
No. Sorry. But what was it again? What was the question again?
Well, it was the childhood trauma, and I understand that you're kind of speaking from experience, and if you wouldn't mind just kind of relating that for everybody, how you sort of integrated your own trauma and what that was like.
That's right. Sorry, because I kind of went ahead of myself and spoke about. So for me, it started quite young. My parents, as soon as I was born, my mother has a lot of trauma. And I love my mother. And so when I say all these things, it's not to speak against her, but she didn't really want me. She said it a lot during the pregnancy and even when I was born. So my parents were already fighting and they never, slept in the same room. So there was domestic abuse in the house from the start. But I was sexually abused by my grandfather between the ages of 3 and 5. And obviously that caused a lot of problems. My parents also separated when I was 8. My dad was kind of my main caregiver, but his girlfriend kind of moved in and he changed. And so all these things caused a lot of problems. And my parents were very big on letting me free. So I can literally go to the park at 4 by myself. And so I was abused again at the park and, on the streets as I grew up. And as I got older, maybe 14, I found out about alcohol and how I loved it from the start. Literally drank 15 beers the first time. And my friends were on 2 on the floor. And I was like, what's wrong with you guys? It's funny, but not funny because from there it was every day, all day, right? For a long time. And so I struggled with addictions. And as I said, for me it was hard because I needed the attention of my parents and I didn't get it. And so I was on the street selling drugs, begging for money, trying to get someone to pay attention to me. And someone found me. It was my ex-husband. He was 32 and I was 17 and he was supposedly a refugee and I was going to save him. He wasn't a refugee. And so, but we got married and, I sponsored him. He got deported. It's a really long story, honestly. But, off and on with drugs and alcohol. But really, at some point, when I was 28, he came back. He came back when I was, I don't know. But I had 2 more kids. So I have 3 kids with him. And when I was 28, my kids were 10, 2, and 1. I decided to leave him. I had enough and I thought, I don't need this abuse. I realized this is another thing from trauma. Because my family was broken, I was going to stay with him no matter what for the kids, and wasn't seeing that this was actually harming the kids because I was so stuck in my trauma and what I thought they needed until my 10-year-old was like, I want to run away. Why are you staying with him? And I was like, what? And it just, something clicked in my head, right? And I left. I took my kids, 28 years old, and left. And I, thank God, was working 60 hours in nursing back then. And it was a very difficult court battle for 2-3 years. He was trying to get spousal support.
Wow.
And yeah, he was Nigerian. So a lot of fraud and a lot of lying. It was really stressful. But in the end, it ended up that they wanted him to pay child support. And so he left the country. Biggest blessing in disguise.
a little too much of a cliche. It's like the Nigerian prince that sends you the email looking for the donation that you're going to get back. It's
I
it's
know
a little too perfect.
there's quite a lot of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I probably met them all. But and you know, I was actually kind of raised by his family too, which was, you know, a great experience. He got deported and I got to travel, so I got to go to Nigeria. I lived in France for a year. You know, saw Europe. So I'm not gonna take away the you know, the good things from it. I got my 3 daughters, you know, which I'm so grateful for. But yeah, it was a hard journey. And at some point, I was recruited into an organization called World Financial Group. And there, I got my insurance and investment license. Yeah, okay, financial industry. So not my thing at this point. But I thought it was like a way for me to build my own brokerage and get residual income because I was really struggling with just the jobs. And so, but there I learned about personal growth and leadership, and I started reading books. And that's when I was like, I learned that people at the bottomest of the bottom can go to the top. And I was like, that's going to be me. And I started doing like leadership trainings. And at the same time, I don't want to say won the court battle because no one really wins in this. But as I said, the judge was like, you're going to have to pay child support. He left the country, as I said. But that made me very strong because I was so scared he was going to kill me. He had threatened me to death, almost like strangled me in front of my kids before. And it was a really scary thing, but I did it anyways, really scared. And I think that was like that what gave me the power and the strength to speak out during the pandemic, because I had been there before and I knew that on the other side of fear is everything I want. And so, you know, I guess that's a little bit in a,
I think what you're describing is courage. That's kind of how I describe it anyway. It's like when you're afraid and you do it anyway. Like you know what the right thing to do is. You're afraid of the consequences of doing it, and then you do it anyway. That's courage. Yeah, it's not the absence of fear. It's overcoming the fear, right?
Yes, because if you know me, you'll know I'm scared of a lot of things.
We all are, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, like good on you. And then there's a kind of reward, I think, that comes with that. Like, and a lot of the time I'll say, like, if you're having trouble with your self-worth, then there's probably no better therapy than just doing something that's worthwhile, working hard to solve your own problems.
Yes.
And there's a therapeutic benefit in that unto itself. So like excellent advice. First of all, so and I'll show your website one more time because I see we have a lot of interested folks here in the comments, and you've got the Work With Me one-on-one, and you've also got the Heal and Rise online group Healing. So I guess somebody could join that from pretty much anywhere.
Yes, that's a support group. That's a program. But I do run a free workshop called Stand in Your Truth because I really want to help people that are at the bottom. You know, my programs are not expensive. My 10-week program online is $250, but I mean, some people can't afford that, right? And so it's called Stand in Your Truth. Yes. And it's an overview of my program, and it's enough to get people started. My program is all about, it's 10 weeks. So it's not about after 10 weeks, you're going to be healed. Right. It's a lifetime journey, right? But I'm very strong on helping people go to the root cause and giving them the tools and knowledge they need to start their healing journey. So unlike the medical industry that treats us as patients, you know, when you're a patient, you're a victim, and it means that you need something from the outside to come and help you. It's very disempowering. It means our bodies are flaws and they don't know what they're doing. I don't believe in that at all. And I believe that people are active participants in their care. And when you're ready to heal, there's nothing that you cannot heal yourself from. And so my job is to educate and guide those people that are ready to heal, to have the tools and knowledge to start doing it. And so that's what my programs are about. But the free workshop, online workshop, I try to run it once a month. is very helpful for that. And I also do it in person here in Mississauga and the greater Toronto area. And it also includes like an hour of boxing, protein shake, and a week's pass at the gym, right? Yeah, so I have the online and I have the in-person, and it's the same thing for my program. I have it online and in person with the boxing. So yeah, and then I also have, so this is all the basics of how to heal from childhood trauma, again, or really just how to go back and turn your pain into wisdom and, you know, for yourself and your life. But this is my first program. It's called Heal. Well, this is the free workshop, but it's the preview to the program. And then I have a Rise program, because when we're healing, it's sometimes could be very challenging, messy, and, you know, it makes us want to quit. And so it's very important to have something to motivate and inspire us at the same time. And so the Rise is all about finding your purpose and, you know, creating that blueprint to reach your dreams and get excited about your life. So that's kind of the plan to get, because when I spoke out, people ask me, what made you speak out? What made you different? And I'm like, it's not that I'm different. It's just that I did this work. And we don't have enough leaders. And so I think this is very important that people learn to stand in their truths, because, you know, when you have integrity, you're not going to let anybody corrupt you or coerce you into doing something you don't want to do.
Yeah, and that's very like Jordan Peterson-esque, you know, the stand in your truth and don't lie ever, like he says, these kinds of things. These are the kinds of behaviors, I think, that just sort of gradually eat away at your soul. And like you said, if you just like show some courage and stand in your truth, and you can kind of build that soul back up. You know, you were just saying something there, you know, about how we're all kind of the same. And Patricia was just saying, holy smokes, we're the same, but different. Yeah, I think that's the dirty little secret that we all keep, is that we're all kind of the same, right? We're probably more the same than we are different most of the time. Yeah. And she's also saying, question, how does Sarah work so hard with the constant threat of lack of motivation? I get moments of downtime, couch death style. I'm a survivor, not a victim. Yeah, you know, of course, I mean, I'm a veteran, so of course I have trauma, but I do find that is something that comes with it. Like, that's one of the things that I struggle with probably the most frequently is kind of the motivational issues. There's an inertia there that, you know, takes a lot of effort to overcome. But I also find that on the other end of that, like, inertia is also hard to stop. So kind of once I get going and I get some momentum, I'm good to go. But overcoming that initial inertia, you got any strategies for that?
Well, I have my moments too. Let's not lie. The last year has been difficult because Canadian Frontline Nurses was like my baby, and it kind of fell, and it's been kind of difficult. But, you know, when you get the ball going, like, I spoke out and things happen. And so it's like, that's the motivation. It's like everything is there because I took a chance and I did something different. And so I just keep going. Right. And so you got to get the ball rolling, though. You got to do something uncomfortable and then roll with it, I think, if that makes sense.
I think so. Like, it is kind of that, it's the initial getting going that I find is so challenging. I think that's the same for a lot of people, right?
Yes. And for me, like, for example, it goes right into what we were speaking about, because when I spoke out, it was because it was when I got to it, I didn't speak out right away. I knew right away that this was not right. I worked in a nursing home. When you work in a nursing home, you know the government doesn't care about these people. They get a fraction of the money for daily food allowance than prisoners do. Right. Wow. And so I was like, what is going on? And I was chief steward of the union. And so I called the union and I said, listen, what are we going to do? Like, they're taking away my residence rights. They're taking away our rights. What are we going to do about it? And the union turned around and said, Sarah, don't you care about your residents? And I was like, oh, crap. Single mom of 3, couldn't go to my other job because anyone that worked in a nursing home couldn't go to 2 jobs. And so I kind of got scared and stayed quiet and watched my residents deteriorate for 5-6 months before I decided, you know, I was so disaligned. Again, I wasn't standing in my truth. Actually, my silence put me in the oppressors, on the oppressor's side. And so I started to deteriorate a lot mentally. I started crying. I started doing drugs. And that's when I realized, like, this is so messed up. I'd rather die than to be disaligned. Once you stood in your truth, it's not worth it. There's nothing in this world. As I said, I was like, well, I'll just sell my house. We'll figure it out. You know, I knew I couldn't afford to not have a job, but you know what? I was going to do the right thing. And I knew also from before with my ex, I did the right thing, scared. I did it anyways. And I knew that at the end, everything, when you stay aligned with yourself and do what you're supposed to do in your life, all the right doors open. We don't have to worry. This is how it works. The more you walk into faith, the more you see how you have every skill you need to adapt to every situation that comes your way.
Yeah, and that's the kind of growth that I think comes with persevering through adversity. So you should welcome these experiences. You know, don't ask for an easy life. Ask for the strength to bear the heavy burden. And you know, you don't get strong by not lifting heavy things. So you should do hard things and become a hard person, and you'll be much better off. If you just embrace these challenges, right?
Yes.
And you touched on something there that I just wanted to explore just a little bit, because I heard you mention like this kind of shame, a kind of toxic shame that a lot of times like these feelings of self-worth stem from, and they originate in childhood, you know, resulting from the kind of trauma that people probably quite generally suffer during childhood. And then there's this pandemic component of it as well, where, you know, here you are like doing and saying the right things and raising these issues with the right people, and the people who were like supposed to be there for you and looking out for you, they respond by shaming you from the sound of it. Just saying, oh, you don't want to take good care of your residents. And so that's like abusive and toxic. So I was just thinking, like, maybe I could get your thoughts on that a little bit. I know that like shame is basically the most negative of all the emotions. It's the one that'll really kind of take its toll on you if left unaddressed. And that was a huge component throughout the whole so-called pandemic, was this shaming about you're killing grandma if you don't take these injections and put on this face burqa and so forth. So yeah, if you don't mind, just broadly some thoughts on that, how those things interplayed, I guess, throughout the pandemic.
Yeah, I think, well, we know shame was totally weaponized against us. It's one of the darkest of emotions, and it makes you feel like you don't belong, you're flawed, you're not supposed to be here. And so and a lot of us carry it. It's a normal emotion to have in certain situations. But now in the egocentric world we live in, a system we live in, it's everywhere, and it's a real big problem. And that's actually why lighting up dark corners, is all a part of that. Because how do you get rid of shame? You should shed light on it. And so that's why I love to talk about everything that nobody wants to talk about, because then I bring light to the people that are stuck in it. And we all are, right? And so, shame, big problem. But once you understand, like, for example, a lot of people with childhood trauma have a lot of shame because of the abuse in itself or the trauma itself, but also what you do with it after, right? Like coping mechanism, like I got so drunk, like the situations I put myself in and the things I did, right? It just makes everything worse. And so I think it's important also to like understand. So like, for example, in my free workshop, I explain how trauma works and what it does to your brain. And once you understand, there's absolutely nothing wrong with you. This is what happens. Your brain literally doesn't develop the same way. And it's in survival mode instead of you feeling safe. So all the behaviors are so normal. Once you understand that there's nothing wrong with you, no matter what you did,
Yeah.
There's a reason for it. Let's look and understand, right? So we need to shed light on shame. And so that's what I do now. Like, I didn't do it with the union, but I'm like, when people try to shame me, I let them know, like, this is not going to work. Like,
Yeah, this is not on. This is not
no,
cool. Not one little bit.
no.
Yeah, good for you. And I did have a comment there before, and I I'll let you address this, but I think this goes hand in hand with what we're saying right now, because Mr. Fox over on YouTube is saying the truth is singular and objective. There is no such thing as your truth. I have some thoughts on that.
Yeah, me too.
Well, but Sarah, I'll let you take that one. Go ahead.
Yes, there is our truth, but there are also facts, right? So we have to be careful. It's true. A lot of people think that their truth is, confuse truth with belief systems. And belief systems are just yours. It's your perspective. It's what you've learned. It is, that's true. That is your truth. And someone who has lived through the same thing might have a different perspective, which their truth kind of shifts differently from yours, even though it's kind of the same situation. It never really is. Even if you're siblings, you didn't grow up with the same parents, not in the same place, not in the same time, not, they had an extra kid or they had less money or I don't know. Right. And so, why I keep losing myself?
You're all good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess I would just kind of add to that and say that as far as the question of objective truth, I am a huge proponent of the objective truth, and if I were to say my truth, I generally don't talk like that just because I'm careful with my words, but I wouldn't mean that in like the Oprah Winfrey sense.
Yeah.
Unleash the hashtag Me Too on the world. That's not the kind of my truth that I mean. I think Sarah's basically hitting on it right there. It's my perspective. It's my beliefs. It's what I believe to be true. Everybody should just kind of share that. You should say, like, if you're standing there and you're the only one who believes things are a certain way and everybody else is saying something that sounds completely out to lunch to you, you should just say your truth, what you believe to be true, because we need all of these different perspectives. We need to weigh these different perspectives. Everybody's coming at it a different way, and that's going to allow us to better ascertain the objective truth, like what's really going on. So,
yes. And can I add something to that? The truth also, like when I say stand in your truth, it's your truth. This is for you. And so it's when you're not aligned with your truth that you start having problems. Every cell in your body knows your truth. If you're going against it, it's going to know. So that is what I mean when I say stand in your truth. It's for you. It's for your own health. It's to make sure you don't betray yourself. Now, when we come together, it's important to distinct our own truth to facts. So fact, the vaccine has toxic things in it. This is the truth. This is right.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like we talk about that around here quite a bit. But by all means, like you're coming at it from the medical professional's perspective here. So do you want to expand on that a little bit?
Not really. I don't think I come from the medical. I don't think there's a lot of truth there. I think for me, it really came from doing my own work outside of the system.
Yeah.
Because you can see people in the system don't live their truth. They're programmed to do something. And it's like this. They don't want you to look on any other side. You got to do what you were taught. Right. And it's so much gaslighting because it's like, make sure you don't informed consent and critical thinking and they throw it in your face and it's like, that's not what they're doing though. Like, so much gaslighting.
I know it was really incredible. And it's enough to make you question your own sanity. It's almost like that's what they were trying to do. But you seem to have persevered through all of this. And you mentioned how, you engaged with your union, you didn't really get anywhere, and you kind of like kept your head down a little bit because you were worried about your kids and the house and all of these things. So would you mind just kind of taking us through like that experience? How did you go from there to ending up in hot water with the CNO? Like tell us a little bit about that part of the story.
Yes. So as I said, in the beginning, they just locked the whole facility. So people had to stay on their units, but they didn't have to be in their rooms, and families couldn't come in. And so that's very detrimental, because when you work in a nursing home, that's their last stop. The only thing they have to look forward to is their loved ones coming in. That's when you see them come to life. Like, how are you going to, I can believe that families let this happen. And the whole experience was so unbelievable for me. Like, I didn't understand how I could be the only one that was like going crazy, losing my mind. And I was giving a lot of problems to, like, also through like supplies. They wanted us to re-gown, use gowns again, gowns that you're supposed to take inside out, put in a box and never touch again. They were like, you're going to hang them up because we might not have enough. And I was like, it's a pandemic. Like, now you're going to start messing up with the rules. Wow. Right? It was like crazy. Nothing made sense. And, even so what I started noticing, for example, I had one of my residents who died within a week of a heart attack. And people were like, Sarah, it's maybe not that. I was like, listen, this was like the type of person that when I came in the morning, I had to call her daughter first thing, because she was going to ask her what time she was coming, because her mom was going to ask me every 5 minutes when she was going to come. And if she was 2 minutes late, it was like she would go into an anxiety attack, like she's dead, she was in a car accident, and this woman had heart problems. And so what do you think is going to happen after a week of her not seeing her daughter? She died of a heart attack. And, in nursing homes, some of our residents don't eat from us. And so their families have to come in and feed them. And they wouldn't let families in. And do you know what they did? They wouldn't let families in to come feed the residents, but they got new volunteers to come and feed them and come in the facility. And I was like, what? So anyways, things were annoying to me. And then to top it all off, 3 housekeepers tested positive in the nursing home. No symptoms whatsoever, but because they're housekeepers and they go across the whole facility, they now shut down the whole facility. So everyone has to stay in their room for 14 days until all testing is negative and clear. And so you can imagine how detrimental that was to them. And some of them have dementia. There's language barriers. They don't even care. They just want to see their kids, right? They're dying. Like, they have nothing else. And so, if someone wasn't listening or, was becoming agitated, they would be said to have a behavior. The doctor would be called and they'd be sedated, which even happened in normal times, to be honest, which I think could be like disgusting. Like, oh, it's kind of like kids in school, right? Oh, we can't handle this behavior. We're not going to go to like the root cause. We're going to like sedate this person. Right. And then to talk, or if someone was trying, so for example, I had a resident that, was becoming very pushy. She wants to go walk with her walker in the hall. That's what she does all day. So she wasn't allowed to do that. Well, they took away her walker because she wasn't listening. So what happened to her? She's alone in her room, losing her capacity to ambulate, but also they're at risk for falls. Everything we learned went out the window.
Right.
So, it became so detrimental. And as someone who was facilitating people with mental health in the community, I can see how devastating that was. And as I said, my own mental health started deteriorating so much, because here I was like part of the problem. I wanted to just scream on top of my head. And to tell you the truth, at first, the first few weeks, I was trying to get COVID. People were so scared, and I was like, I'll test this resident. And, because I knew there was a vaccine coming, and, I wanted to have, I didn't realize that, natural immunity wasn't going to be a thing anymore. Like so many things, right? And so it just became too much for me. And as I said, I didn't care if I lost my house or anything. I just didn't want to lose myself.
Yeah, it is a really soul-crushing experience, like I said. I know what you mean. I was actually still in the military until September of 2021. And it was insane. Like, all these different measures and stuff like that. I'm sitting in the boardroom and I'm the only one going, now, wait a minute here. You're saying you want to punish this guy for getting COVID? And they'd look at me like, no, that's not what we're doing. I'm like, yeah, it is. No, that's not what we're doing. I'm like, well, that's what they're going to think. Like, No, they're not going to think. I would think that,
Yeah.
that you're punishing me for getting COVID. So it was just incredible. It became, authoritarian at the end of the day. Like, it was all about following these arbitrary rules and all of the standards and practice and, that they were time tested and proven effective for decades and centuries. They all went out the window. And then all of a sudden it was all that mattered was this regime of rituals we were all engaged in to try to control nature. And I'm sitting there going, like, you can't control it, guys. Like, the best you can do is mitigate.
Yes.
And I'm not even sure we're doing that.
Yes, exactly. It was like, where's the preventative care, and why are we scaring everyone? We know that decreases your immune system. Isolation, it's like a torture method. What are we doing?
I know. None of it was good for people.
And people are like, and then people are like, Sarah, don't be a big mouth for this. Oh my God.
I mean, they went to an awful lot of trouble to protect us from ivermectin.
That's one of the allegations against me, is because I promoted ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine and vitamin D.
Well, yeah, you're basically Hitler.
I know.
So yeah, tell us a little bit more about that, I guess, because you were just on the stand there last week, and so what was that experience like? And what are these? I guess the sort of, in lay terms, what are these allegations that you're facing?
So when I spoke out in October 2020, I also founded Nurses Against Lockdowns, which kind of merged into Canadian Frontline Nurses with Kristen. And so they really didn't like that. So I'm kind of like, they see me as the head of uniting the nurses against them. So I was basically the first active nurse to speak out as a rally too. So they're kind of using me as an example. And I posted a lot of things on social media through Nurses Against Lockdowns. And so there's 12 allegations that they took from there against me to revoke my license, basically. Mm-hmm. And so, so it was supposed to be a 7-day trial, our experts against theirs. We're on day 21 now. My experts, Dr. Stephen Pellick, and Dr. Byron Bridle, were hardly qualified at all. So very hard to put any evidence in. We're struggling. We have a motion through to get a new expert now just to put the evidence in. They're giving us such a hard time because we know, we're going to have to take this higher, and we will. And so, so it's been 21 days of crazy nonsense, corrupt circus stuff. And then came my turn. Right. And so I was on the stand for the first time, and so there's like 5 or 6 investigations against me. This is the first one. And this is the one that will have precedence, though. It's for freedom of speech in nursing in Canada. So it's a pretty big case, because if I don't win, it's going to stay this way. And nurses won't be the last line of defense. We literally can't do our jobs, right? We can't give an informed consent. We can't do critical thinking, and we can't be the last line of defense. And so, it's kind of ridiculous. So the investigation has the 12 allegations. So they sent me the 12 allegations and the exhibits against me. And at the end, they send the code of conduct and the practice standards.
Oh my God.
It's so crazy because if you look at it, it's like, I did all of this and you didn't. And so that's what I did on the stand. I said my whole story and how it plugged into why I did what I did, because they try to make me look very crazy in the last 20 days. But the panel actually looked like it really liked me. And so, I went through every point, every code of conduct, every standard, told them how I held it up and they didn't. And I told them I thought I was going to get a reward. So, but anyways, I have 2 more days on the stand. So next one is July 22nd. I'll be going through the 12 allegations, who are all known to be true, pretty much true now, but the college keeps saying, but you had no way of knowing back then. So
it's a judgment call.
So that's what their case is about, but my lawyer's case is about freedom of speech. So we're doing the same case, but for different reasons. But we're just going to stick to ours because that's what it is, right? And so, and on August 2nd, I'll get cross-examined, and then it's going to be probably the closing, I forget what it's called, arguments.
Yeah,
and then, and so there's probably 5-6 days left at this point, but we'll have to most probably appeal it. The panel is registered nurses and one public member. So we'll see. I don't know. I'm not saying I can't get their hearts. I might, I don't know, but I'm going to take it all the way up. This is an investment in our children's and the next generation's future. I'm not doing it like they can revoke my license. For the last 3 years, I would be like, I don't want my license. I don't want my license. But I kind of changed my mind lately because they want me to resign my license. And I was thinking, maybe there's a reason why Canadian frontline nurses kind of fell apart, and I'm now back to being the only owner. And because we were creating a new healthcare paradigm, and that was kind of my vision. And so maybe, once I get my license back, I'll go back to that. So I'm going to keep it open and see. But yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah.
And since you mentioned it, I mean, you say Canadian frontline nurses kind of fell apart. So is it not active in existence anymore? Maybe tell us a little bit about that.
No. So we had other legal cases too. We had a defamation case against the Canadian Nurses Association and another news outlet in BC who had defamed us after we did the national hospital protest in September 2021, and it was pretty big. And so we were again, defamed by the media big time. Our addresses were leaked. I had a bounty put on my head. We were again put on TV, founders of Canadian frontline nurses trying to get into hospitals to and then they put someone with a gun before putting my face, just crap, right? And so we decided, and then the Canadian Nurses Association wrote a piece calling us anti-vaxxers and things like that, and which we're not. Well, I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I'm just you need to have informed consent before you make a decision. Do what you want. It's your body. It's always been about that, right? Yeah. And so, God, I keep losing my train of thought. No, I was talking about the hospital.
We're covering a lot of ground. Yeah. And we're getting some comments here. A lot of people are talking about the long-term care facilities in particular. And Gaynor saying, worked in a senior residence doing renovations for 4 months. Not one case. The residents would not be locked in. They tried. When the staff asked, "Where are you going?" the answer was none of your business. Well, it sounds like you had a pretty strong bunch there in your nursing home. But Catherine is also saying, so sad. My mother was locked up and died alone. None of her family was allowed in the hospital. It was wicked. So inhumane. My heart breaks forever for her. Yeah, that really is what's been lost, I think, in all of this is our humanity.
Yes.
And there's probably no better an example than what we saw happen in the long-term care facilities.
Yes, it was disgusting. Neglect. Such neglect. And when you enter a nursing home, there's the Residents' Bill of Rights on the side at every entrance. And it was just such a slap in the face. I was like, what happened to this? Everything went out the window. Yeah. And people didn't question it. I'm like, we have in-services every year teaching us about masks. We get fitted for N95s because if there's a flu outbreak, your little blue mask doesn't cover anything.
No. It was ridiculous, and that's why I say it was ritual. They made this thing into a religion. It's like a COVID cult, and the mask is simply a burqa for your face to show your fealty to the regime, and the injection is basically a blood sacrifice. It was astonishing to see people in line for their vaccines watching somebody else who just got it come out on a stretcher in convulsions. And they just kind of watch them go by, and they just stay in the lineup and go in to line themselves up for the same thing. It was this great sacrifice that they were making, to the gods of.
People want to feel important. We live in a system that makes us feel like we're not, and so that they really knew how to manipulate people and get that going. That is my control.
Yeah, they really appealed, I think, to people's instincts, like the survival instinct was at play.
Yeah.
They're driving all these wedges and playing on the like the tribal impulses, and that's how we end up kind of turning on each other. You've got the people in the cult that are in the tribe, and those of us out of the tribe are outsiders, threats, carriers for disease, and heretics, and that's what you get from them when you see, because I went around walking around with no mask on
Yeah.
for the first few months after I retired from the military, and then the trucker convoy fired up, so I went and did that. But like, people look at you, and I'm like, I know this face, I know what you're doing, this reaction I'm getting, like it's the blasphemy reaction.
Yeah.
And you know what we do to blasphemers historically? Like, all of the most heinous things you can think of. And so that's what you got this kind of aggression from the people in the cult towards the people who were out of the cult. And I mean, just I think the kind of social abuse and the damage that's been incurred from that, it's going to be a lifetime, before we really move past this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so on that, what are your thoughts on like the kind of societal trauma that we're having to deal with now? Like, this is a real mess. I keep saying that we're going to be cleaning up. We're going to be cleaning this mess up for like decades now. But yeah, what are your thoughts on this kind of societal trauma that we've all suffered as a result?
Yeah, and I think they purposefully did that because it puts us in victim mode and it makes us listen even more. I talk about complex post-traumatic stress disorder when I explain trauma to people, and I also make the difference. It's PTSD is different. Post-traumatic stress disorder is when you usually have one incident that really disrupts your life. So a big car accident, for example, and now you're having nightmares, flashbacks. Maybe you can't get in a car or put a seatbelt. You have anxiety attack. Like, you're just affected. And if you get the right help, in the system, I'm not talking about taking pills that actually disconnect you even more, because that's not the right help. But if you get the right tools and knowledge, you can really learn to manage that within a year. Complex PTSD is a little bit different. So it happens when there's more than one abuse. It doesn't have to be big abuses. It could be like little traumas, like discrimination, gaslighting, shaming, right? All these little things. But it's like when there's multiple abuses happening over a long period of time where people can't leave.
Mm-hmm.
So I always say this about, like, childhood trauma is a big one. And, obviously it has a much bigger effect when a child's brain is developing, because it doesn't develop properly at all. It's a lot smaller. It's different. It looks different. You can see it in a CAT scan. But there's other ways that you can get that. Like, for example, domestic violence victims can get complex PTSD. Prisoners of war, obviously, they can't escape, right? They get tortured. They can't escape. It's over a long period of time. Complex PTSD. But now I'm like, okay, it's not to the same extent, but everyone, no matter what side you were on, you fit this criteria now. So if you're like us, we were discriminated against, like there was a lot of abuse going on, even by family and friends, over a long period of time, and you can't escape. It's global. Yeah. It's the criteria, right? And so it causes problems for people. And if you were on the other side and you really believed that there was a virus, you thought that if you go outside and breathe, you might die.
Yeah.
Trauma. Right.
Yeah.
And so they've kind of done this to everyone. And when it does is a little bit different than complex PTSD. And it takes a lot longer to fix. So it causes problems with emotional regulation. It causes problems with alertness. So you go between being hypervigilant and dissociating, right? So you're not as alert all the time. It brings you towards addiction. It causes problems with relationships and causes somatic illnesses like fibromyalgia.
Yeah.
Because it's in your nervous system, right? And so it's a lot harder to, and I feel like that's what they did. And people are, a lot more mental health than before. And there was an epidemic before.
Yeah.
And now they have
Yeah.
the maids. Like, oh, you don't feel good? Like, here's the conveyor belt. Like, we're going to
Oh
put
my
you
God.
through hell. You're going to destroy the economy, destroy your health, destroy your independence. And then, oh, you're not well. Oh, we're going to give you pills that are going to make you worse. And oh, you're worse. Well, we have this medically assisted death, which is the 5th cause of death in Canada this year.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's another one of your hobby horses. You've been pretty vocal about what's going on with the maid regime in Canada. Do you want to fill in our audience a little bit?
Well, that's pretty much what I just said is it's state sponsored murder, and they've brought in disability and poverty this year. They were bringing in mental health. They put a hold on it. I think there was a lot of pushback, but they also are doing so kids now 12 and up, if they think that they're able to make their own decisions, don't have to have consent from their parents to get state. Like, this is serious stuff. I tell people, it's gone up so much. So when I actually wanted to post it, I got this from Jason Christoph. I saw it was the 6th cause. And I really trust him, but I always do my own research to make sure that it hasn't changed or that no one missed anything. Right. And so when I went back, it had become the 5th cause, 14,000 last year. So I think in total, Canada, 24,000 have been done. And I think last year we were up to 10,000. Now we're at 24,000. It's going up so fast that people, that it might become the number 1 cause of death here in Canada, state-sponsored murder. So, and they're doing it for things that, so someone had told me that now they're adding for some people fibromyalgia you can go and do this. And I'm like, that is crazy. Like, it's the stress. You can recover from this, but no, they make money when they kill you.
Yeah. Yeah. There is a profit incentive that's driving this as well, right?
Yes. There's many things driving it, right? They think there's too many of us anyway, so might as well send them over here.
Yeah. There's a real kind of misanthropic, undertone to this whole thing. Like, it's anti-human. The way they talk about us is like we're vectors for diseases and a plague on the planet and so on and so forth. Of course, it's a bunch of bunk. Humans are incredible. They're probably the most incredible thing that's ever existed in Earth anyway. And if there's probably one thing out there that's worthwhile promoting, it would be human flourishing. Like, that's what we're trying to do is, build a better world for future generations and so on and so forth. But it doesn't really seem like the people in charge are on board with that. They're like, no, we're shutting this down. So it's a really incredible thing to have to live through. I don't think we ever thought we were going to see this during our lifetimes when we were kids.
No, I always thought I wanted a revolution, but I didn't think it was going to happen in my lifetime at all. Yeah. And I need to look at it like that, because I remember when I was devastated and crying and before I spoke out, and I remember my daughter telling me, "Why are you so upset? This is what you wanted." And I looked at her. I was so angry. I was like, what is this child talking about? But I did have all the freedom fighter shirts, revolution shirts. And I was like, this world is so messed up. We're taking from everything from the poor, and they can't eat. They're dying of hunger. We're bringing it here, and here we're dying because we eat too much. And I was just very aware. And I was always very talking about, advocating about my thoughts and things like that. And yeah, we have to remember, maybe it's messy. Change is messy, but this is our chance to actually do that and learn how powerful humans are and learn to get that power out, right? Yeah. And use it. I think it's exciting.
Yeah, me too.
Like that.
I really do as well. I mean, and it's this kind of triumph over adversity. Great things happen in the wake of a crisis like this. I mean, the last time we were faced with a crisis of this magnitude would have been the Second World War, and post World War II era was really where all our technology came into play. Higher standards of living than the world has ever seen. There was a much brighter future on the other side of all that darkness. And so I find that there's room for optimism when you kind of put it in that light.
Sometimes I don't always feel like that, but I try.
Well, the pendulum does swing, and I think everybody recognizes that it's all the way over to the left right now, like way too far. But when it swings back, like there's going to be, I think, this kind of, an upswing where, things are going to move back in the other direction and in a really positive kind of, and monumental way. All right, and I got a comment here from one of my trolls. This is Christian Rose. He's in my local area, and speaking of cults, he's in the transgender cult that stalks and grooms vulnerable adolescent girls for sacrifice of their virgin fertility on the altar of wokeness to the gods of Christians' own self-righteousness. And he's saying, on Jeff's next episode, Dude Bro, who's going to tell us about how Building 7 is the key to understanding 9/11 was an inside job. Well, it wasn't an inside job. It was a terrorist attack. And I've done probably 20 hours worth of videos debunking 9/11 conspiracy theories. So you're really barking up the wrong tree on this one. And this is the guy that we just found out today. Like, he doesn't even understand what a false dichotomy is. That's what he tries to set me up with in a lot of his stupid comments, is drag me into these logical fallacies. But these people aren't logical. They're completely detached from reality. And so they just kind of spew all this emotive nonsense. And a lot of it is projection. And as we can see, that's what Christian's engaged in right now. He's basically calling Sarah here some kind of a crackpot. And this is coming from a guy who thinks that mammals can change gender, and we should go ahead and start state-imposed for-profit sexual butchery of children in the name of this crackpot idea that humans can change gender. So well done, Christian, for providing us with the example of how stupid you people are. Again, thanks for chiming in, dickhead. All right.
Can I tell Chris, can I say something?
Please do. Yeah.
I actually suffered from gender dysphoria as a child, and my mom had to call me Peter. And so I know all about that. And I would have been for sure first one to transition. My parents could have not said anything. I remember when puberty came, it was a big issue for me. Like, I was like, no. And so the system would have done great with me. But the thing is that what people don't understand, and this is scary. This is, again, mental health. You know, if I didn't do my work and reconnect to my true self, I wouldn't have been empowered. I would have gone the other way. And like, transitioning actually disconnects you even more from your authentic self. And so you have more problems. We know data shows that people kill themselves. The suicidal rate is much higher after transitioning. And so, but the thing about it too, is that the system wants you to transition. It makes money, you know, you won't have kids, but also, it makes it much harder for you to do your healing work and become an empowered individual who is going to be able to stand in their powers. And so that's an actual big problem. And I feel bad for him, because this is mental illness. It's a disconnection from the self. And so it goes right. It's a personality disorder. That's what we called it before. Yes. They just change stuff and try to make it look good. But yeah, I actually have experience with that. My mom had to call me Peter for many years, or I wouldn't come home. Wow. And so I know all about that. And a lot of it is, for me, it was connected to the sexual abuse, where, I integrated as a 3-year-old that, wearing a dress meant oh my God, this is dangerous. And it's because I'm a girl and it makes me weak. And so I didn't want to be a girl. And so this is the problem with what they're doing with kids. First of all, there's a lot of sexual abuse in just verbally talking about certain things, but they also get to see certain things. That is a type of sexual abuse, actually, and confuses kids. And so they're creating a lot of confusion, and they're programming them with this. And so teaching them how to disconnect from themselves, and, and this makes you special, you know what I mean? And so it's really scary stuff. So I feel bad for Christian, because he doesn't know how messed up he is.
Yeah, how sick and evil a freak he really is.
Yeah.
And as Patricia was just pointing out, he is really fat. Look at this guy. I don't know if you can see his picture in here, but I mean, he you need a wide lens to fit this guy in there. He is so gross and fat.
And that just shows that he's not mentally well. Like that,
I agree.
you know.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of that inward ugliness on the inside that's manifesting on the outside. You know, and he does his very best, by the way, to make sure that I'm as miserable as possible by because my daughter is caught up in all of this. You know, she was indoctrinated in a Soji program in Ontario, and she's 21 now and on testosterone, and it's very sick. And I can't, and I mean, I could protect her as long as she was under my roof, but she is no longer. And of course, it's all contrived, and it's all very painful. So he wants to make sure that he inflicts as much pain as he possibly can on anybody who's not in his cult. Because that's what these sick freaks are really like, right? When they get in the cult, like there's this kind of self-righteousness and hostility toward the outsider. And of course, I'm a heretic of his religion, and so I should be purified by the pain. So it's a hell of a thing that we're living through right now. But we're coping around here, you know.
I'm very sorry to hear that about your son.
Yeah, my daughter. Yeah, it's something I've been dealing with for a number of years. So I'm, you know, it's never easy, but thank you. I'm managing, coping just fine, especially when, you know, I have I have these fat bastards to make fun of. It's therapeutic. So there's Christian again. You still talking about me, mate? Yeah, you're still here, aren't you? You're in here commenting again. You see the projection? This is the guy who obsesses over me every day. He's completely obsessed with me. He posts on my timeline every day, and he's like, "You still talking about me?" Yeah, that's what it is. I'm obsessed with you.
Yeah. I mean, it validates their not feeling like they're enough.
Yeah. And some of the stuff that you just said there, I'm glad that, like, you seem like you're pretty conversant in this subject as well. And yeah, I mean, the suicide rate goes up post-transition. I was just showing these statistics last week while I was talking with Emily Duggan from Moms Against the Norm. She's a spectacular warrior in this fight, real force to be reckoned with. And she you know, has a lot of this information at her fingertips. And I was showing some studies that showed the post-transition, the suicide rate goes up. And no matter what the cause of death, they really only last about 10 to 12 years post-op anyway, because as you said, like, there's this profit incentive of it, and they're basically churning out these permanent medical patients that have a short life of intense suffering ahead of them, but there's big bucks in it for big pharma. So I wonder, do you think that is part of what's driving a lot of this? I understand that there's a social component to it as well. There's this kind
Absolutely. So much money. They make so much money. It's crazy. And it's so barbaric. I don't know if you've seen pictures of what they do and how they do it. I've posted some, and that got me censored for quite a long time, but it's disgusting. They don't even know what they're doing.
No,
it's all experimental too. It's like Frankenstein stuff.
Oh yeah, I've seen. I share these pictures, especially on X, which is not as censored as Facebook. But I'll share some of the stuff that is allowed on Facebook. I want people to see these things. No more willful blindness, guys. Like,
absolutely.
This is. Yeah, everybody should be, you know, acutely aware of exactly what they're doing to these people, and the only way to do that is to put the image in front of them. And then you'll still get one of these sick freaks like Christian here. He'll call me a homophobe because I'm sharing a picture of somebody that's been completely mutilated, and I'm like advocating for better protections for children, which apparently makes me a homophobe to the people in the cult. It's freaking insane. These people are lunatics.
A little bit of pedophile essence there.
That was the false dichotomy that he was trying to set up earlier. It's like, you're either a pedophile or you're not. And I'm like, well, that's not the way you've set it up, though, because he's asking, like, what about all these people that support it, like the caregivers and other family members? Are they pedophiles? And I was like, well, here are all of the different reasons that anybody could get behind this. And pedophilia is the one that motivates Christian, but you know, there's the profit incentive. You know, there's sadism generally. Yeah. So there's
Absolutely, because the establishment is holding it up too. One of the investigations against me is on my views on this.
really,
Yeah.
they're coming after you for that.
Yep.
Okay. Would you mind sharing a little bit about
Well,
that?
exactly what I said. I'm like, this is a mental health. This is like a mental health issue. These people are disconnected. Exactly what I said. And I'm like, we're disconnecting them even more. We're causing more harm. The medical industry is causing more harm. We could just go to the root cause. Like, why can't we teach people the tools and knowledge that they need to do their work and be mindful and know what's going on in their bodies? Like, it's so crazy to me. So yeah, they don't like that I say it's a personality disorder, and that I totally call them out. Like, this is so harmful. And
It's right in the DSM-5.
and I share my story. Like, my lawyer's like, they don't want you to share your story. It's crazy. Like, I literally shared my experience and how gender dysphoria was attached to sexual abuse for me, and like literally just everything I said. And then they were like, that's investigation, because I'm misguiding, because again, I'm going against the medical industry. I'm like, they're harming people by doing this instead of helping them reconnect to their true self.
Yeah, and the rates of dysphoria drop off astronomically post puberty. Like they've essentially pathologized puberty at this point, because like there's an 88% rate of desistance at age 23, and I think a 97% rate of desistance by age 25. So all indications are that this is a phase that people will outgrow eventually, as they probably better integrate some of that childhood trauma. And grow through that experience, right?
Absolutely. The problem is, and then that's what happened to me. I grew out of it, but it's because you realize, like, I realized that, oh, okay, there's something not right. Let me like do some work. But now they're normalizing that. So I'm thinking these people are going to hit this age and think that there's not, like, because I had to integrate myself, right? I like men. And so, you know what I mean? And, and I did experience with, like, I thought maybe I was bisexual at some point. But, it was really all connected to the sexual abuse for me, and for many. But again, with the confusion, they're just confusing our children. And children want to please their parents too. So if their parents want them to be like different, then they're going to be that.
Yeah, they've made it cool and trendy. And not only that, but there's this LGBTQ2AIP ** plus club that they say it's an inclusive club, like that's a good thing, but in fact it's an exclusive club.
Yes.
And they like gaslight these kids as if their heterosexuality is something to be ashamed of or something.
Yeah.
And these people who are transitioning, adolescents who are transitioning, are like, are like the special little angels in the woke religion that are so encouraged. And if there's one thing that somebody that age, an adolescent, really wants, it's to be in the club. It's to be accepted. It's to be in the cool kids club. And so that's what they've done, is they've really just exploited people at probably their most vulnerable age. Like this is the time when people really have the power to really screw up their lives, but they don't have the brains to manage that yet. And they've you spend your child's adolescence as a parent just trying to keep the rails in place, try to keep the guardrails up so they don't come right off the track. And now you've got the institutions basically just hauling them right off of that track, right? And they tell them, it's so abusive what they tell them. Somebody, an adolescent, is saying, like, I'm not feeling comfortable in my body, and they're being told, yeah, there's something wrong with you. There's something wrong with your body. You're in the wrong body. Yeah. And then they send them down this path to becoming a permanent medical patient. It's just, I say it's the sickest damn thing to ever happen in Canada.
It really is.
Yeah.
The complications, it's so disgusting. Like, I can't believe it.
Yeah, me neither. And I'll show this really quick. I just pull this up kind of whenever this comes up on the program, but this is from Statista, which is a statistics aggregator there. This data is coming from the United States, and they're showing, it says share of respondents who identified as lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender in the United States from 2012 to 2023 by generation. The older generation, the silent generation, is in green, and then you've got the boomer generation in red, Gen X in gray, millennials in black, and Gen Z in blue. And as you can see, yeah, if we compare these, right, like look at the older generations, this is the silent generation and the boomer generation, like their rates, the silent never crack 2%. The boomers just barely, I think, crack it to 2.3% out here in 2023, but that's at the same time that Gen Z is at 22.3%. So that's like 10 times the rate in Gen Z as we see in the boomer generation. And the thing is that if this were a genuine civil rights movement, then we should expect to see the highest rates in the oldest generations, because those would be the people who have been suppressed for the longest, who are coming out of the closet now to say, I can finally be my true authentic self and everybody's accepting. But that's not what we see. We see the opposite, where it's the youngest generation with by far the highest rates, which indicates to me that we're dealing with a social pathogen here, not a genuine civil rights movement.
Yes, 1000%.
Yeah, no kidding. So, and Thomas was just saying, I did want to touch on this because this is a theme. We're talking about trauma here. And Thomas is saying, no generation had more trauma than Gen X. Changed my mind. LOL. Well, I'm not going to try to change your mind, because as I understand, I'm not, because I know the statistics on this, and Gen X has the highest rate of child abuse. We suffered with the most child abuse of any generation on record right now. Well, except for the United States, their records go back a little further, and the highest generation on record would have been the lost generation that won on the battlefields of World War I and led on the battlefields of World War II. They were like the child miners and boot blacks, newsies, steel workers of the turn of the 20th century. And I mean, they would have been the ones who got run over in the street by horse carriages, and nobody would even pick them up. But when a generation after that, if somebody ran over a child in the streets, they'd get lynched. And the reason for that is because those children grew up and became much more protective of children. And we see that with Gen X as well. This is kind of part of the cycle of history that I talk about quite a bit, but we see that with Gen X as well, where not only were we the latchkey kids of the 1980s, but nowadays we're the helicopter parents of the global pandemic, the overprotective type. Okay, so you've obviously got some thoughts on this. I can see by the way that you're nodding along. So Thomas was just saying no generation has had more trauma than Gen X. We're the latchkey kids of the 1980s turned veterans of Afghanistan and Iraq. First Canadian generation to go to war in 50 years. That's us. So there's no shortage of trauma in Generation X. But I'll throw that over to you, Sarah, for some thoughts on that.
Well, I'm not going to disagree with him neither. I totally agree that Gen X, and I think also the whole pandemic thing, what it did to us, and how we were the last generation to have no internet, and then to move through it and have it. So it's a big thing, like it's a big change. And yeah, I think for me, definitely, like I spoke out for my kids. Like I was scared for my kid. I'm scared for like what's going to happen to our children. And I know what abuse and trauma does. And I can see that this is what they're doing. And so, especially as a nurse, I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to do like Doctors Beyond Borders and go like where no doctor wanted to go. So I was always kind of like, always wanted to have that extra thing. Like I wanted to go further, or like, I like challenges.
Yeah.
I'm scared when I say that, but I know you know. But but yeah, like this was for me, like this was like there is no, at first I was like, where I'm gonna wait for like more senior nurses to come out, and then it didn't happen. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna have to do this because like I need to defend my kids. And everybody else's kids, which are my kids, in my opinion. We're all connected. And so that's what it was all about for me. But I think it's because, again, I took my pain from my trauma and I transcended it into power. And so that's why I was able to do it. Because if we look, it's not all Gen X's that spoke out at all, right? Even though a lot of us who are speaking out are from Gen X, I think. I feel.
That's my take on it as well. I'll plug it right now. But Strauss-Howe generational theory. Neil Howe is a demographer that forecasted we'd enter into a crisis that would threaten our civilization in the year 2020, plus or minus 2 years, and he said that in 1991. And it has to do with all the demographics in play. And it's always the case that we go into one of these major crises every 4 generations, when the generation born in the wake of the previous crisis reaches peak institutional power in their early elderhood, as we all do just prior to retirement. We're at the peaks of our careers. And that's the boomer generation. And that would have been the generation that raised their kids under latch and key and became the white collar criminals of the 90s that eventually defrauded their way to peak market power. And the whole damn thing collapsed with the global financial crisis of 2008. And then they said, we're too big to fail, and took all of our money to pay themselves bonuses, and then laid all the other generations off in the trades. And as we see, like throughout the 2010s, it's like one institution after another just goes like dominoes, whether it's, the university, where, we have these professors coming out and saying, we need some muscle over here to get rid of the press, whether it's the university, the press, the police, 2010 with the, what was it? It was the G20 summit in Toronto, where they kettled all the protesters. So militarized police forces, indoctrination, where education used to be all this crack pottery now in the medical fields, so on and so forth. And 2020 is basically the year when all of the institutions come under boomer control. And that's basically what we're doing is, and that's, of course, it sounds like it's a blanket statement, but it's not. I'm talking about a social trend here. So,
Right.
there's,
Yeah.
and of course we have plenty of boomers out there who are breaking ranks. They're all the people who got excommunicated, like banished from the institutions, the Robert Malones and so on and so forth, who actually took a stand, but they're a very small minority. And when you look at something like the trucker convoy, when I was there, that's what I was looking for. I was looking around going, yeah, this is Gen X. These are all the Gen Xers that just jumped in their trucks and said, all right, boomers, like, enough is enough already. Yeah, you're not going after our kids. Well, that was a hell of a thing, woke up the world with the whole.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
I got all emotional seeing your footage before. It was like we were there again.
I know. Well, we've been through a lot in the last 4 years. And so I'm not changing my intro. I'm like, we need to commemorate
Absolutely
these things, never again. And lest we forget, right?
I love your hat, by the way.
Yeah, thanks. I started wearing this. They refused me service at the Legion because I didn't have my vaccine passport. This was the month that I retired. the day that I took possession of my retirement home was the same day that the vaccine passport came into effect in Nova Scotia. So I was like cut out of society, and they wouldn't serve me at the Legion. I got my lest we forget hat, and I crossed out the lest and put all my deployment pins on and stuff, and just started getting arrested maskless. So, and yeah, when the trucker convoy came, I was like, that's where I need to be. So
yes,
so this definitely, I think, the best damn thing I've ever seen on Canadian soil. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And, sorry, were you there, or were you saying that you were watching?
Oh yeah, I went. Kristen was on the boots on the ground for the whole 3 weeks. I just went on the weekends because I have 3 kids. And yeah, like the first weekend, I actually brought my kids because I think it's quite important for them to live this and see it. So yeah, I did. I loved it. I was there when everything went down in the front when they took the guy out, the first trucks and stuff. So yeah, it was quite an experience, wasn't it? Crazy. It was crazy.
Yeah, completely insane. But at the same time, like I said, best damn thing I ever saw in Canada. I was walking
Yeah.
around the streets of Ottawa, and I was just like, I'm in danger. I'm
Yeah.
going to get arrested. This is awesome. It's so great that everybody's here. Like I just, I never
So
felt so
much
proud of my
love.
service. Yeah, so much love.
Yeah. Yes.
It was just incredible.
It
Had my
was.
medals. Never felt so proud of my service as I did with those people there. It was really something
Exactly.
else.
Me too, actually, as a nurse. It was well, maybe not just the convoy, but we had like other events, right? But also
Yeah.
like throughout the whole like speaking out thing, it's been so amazing. Like the support is so empowering.
Yeah, 1,000%. And we found each other. We all found each other.
Yes.
And woke up the world. So a lot of
Yeah.
people are still bitter over it, but even at the time, I was like, we're getting arrested, guys. Like they're gonna false flag us like they did with January 6th. I was saying it at the time. So everybody be ready to get arrested. And it was just
I
like
was
a
there on-
watershed moment.
I was there on January 6th, by the way.
Oh, that's right. You were in DC for giving a speech, weren't you?
yes.
Okay. And
And
how did that go?
we got mixed up in because we were like a block away from the Capitol. Like if we wanted to go to the washroom, we had to go to Capitol. And so we got kind of mixed up in that when we came back. And that's why like we were defamed internationally and called domestic terrorists. And that was pretty bad. The death threats after that were pretty intense. Because it was like 2020, right? Like, or 2021.
Yeah. It almost doesn't mean anything anymore. Like a word like extremist or terrorist or something like that. Like, they're really blurring the lines. I try to bring them back in here, and I'm like, guys, there's radicalism and there's extremism. The line between those two is violence. Okay. Like when they say extremist, they're not talking about violence. They're just trying to, stoke fear and apply a label and stuff like this that makes people think of violence. But then if you really confront them on it, then they'll be like, no, we just mean extreme views or something.
Yeah.
Like
You're right. It's so crazy.
It's just a smear campaign is what it is.
Yeah.
So I have your email up there if anybody wants to donate to your defense. And also you have a Give, Send, Go as well. So if anybody wants to help Sarah with her defense in her disciplinary hearing from the CNO, she's being disciplined for invoking standards. Which, standards are verboten nowadays. So by all means, guys, head over there to Give, Send, Go, and I have it up in the ticker there. It's like the Give, Send, Go / Sarah. Donate to Sarah's defense at givesendgo.com/SOS_4S_Sarah. So for those of you just listening, go and check that out as well. So definitely we got to support all these freedom fighters. And speaking of supporting freedom fighters, here's the Veterans for Freedom website. You can subscribe to our newsletter here, join Veterans for Freedom by clicking join here, or support Veterans for Freedom by clicking support here. And we're just going with the V4F donation these days, guys. That's to help us keep the lights on, my StreamYard account, the website, this kind of thing. So we need all the help we can get with that. And the other one that we were doing was the support fund that we donate to any Canadian basically who's suffering under this tyranny right now. It's still there on the website, but it's not active. We've migrated that over. Drew in particular has migrated this over to the Accountability Project. And here it says the Accountability Project is a federal nonprofit with a mandate to advocate for human rights, including raising funds for public interest plaintiffs and class action lawsuits. So if you've been abused by the state in all of this and you think you have a case for a lawsuit, then the Accountability Project might be able to help you with your legal costs. And I think this is a fabulous thing, obviously, that is very much needed in Canada. And we're seeing more and more of these groups, legal organizations, the JCCF and so on and so forth, that are coming to the fore. But it costs money. It is what it is. And embrace lawfare, guys, because they're waging lawfare against us. So we got to step into that battle space and start hitting them back, right? And I'm talking about the Chinese Communist Party in particular. That's kind of the invisible hand in all of this. The they that we're always talking about. It's the boomers and the Chinese Communist Party. So let's start hitting those guys in the lawfare battle space. Okay, and that brings us all the way back to Florence Nightingale, and she says, "I think one's feelings waste themselves in words. They ought to all be distilled into actions which bring results." And I'll just repeat myself here again. There is no better therapy than just working hard to solve your own problems. But I'll throw over to Sarah for the final thought on this. Thank you so much for joining us, Sarah. Final thought is yours. Please go ahead.
I love that. I think more nurses should have read that quote, or more people. Basically, I totally agree. It's like it goes with the same. It makes me think of like the graveyard is the richest place on earth, because it's full of songs that weren't sung or books that weren't written, or so a lot of people, and I mean, it's not necessarily exactly the same thing, but I think that we keep a lot of what we have in us. And again, it goes back because we think we're not good enough, or we can't do it, or this and that. Just try, just start, right?
Yeah.
And put it into action. And that's like, look at where I'm at now. Like, I had the emotions and I wasn't speaking out, and and I had a lot to say, but I wasn't acting until I spoke out. And that's where life really begins, is when we start acting on what we're supposed to be doing. That's the purpose of life. That's how you're going to get to where you were supposed to be, what you were born to do.
Yeah. Wise words. I agree. I tend to think that even the anger and the fear and the shame and a lot of these more toxic kind of energies, like it's still an energy that you have, and so you should put it into something productive. Otherwise, if you just sit there and ruminate, like all that energy is just going to burn you up. So you got to find something productive to put that into.
Yes.
I'll throw to a few comments here, guys, before we sign off. And the audience really appreciates you here, Sarah. So we're happy to have you.
Thank you.
And Tracy is here saying, "Wish you all the best, Sarah." Thank you, Jeff, for having her on here. And Tracy was the one who asked the question about the fibromyalgia. So I'm glad we got a chance to dive into that. Darlene is saying, "Great live, Jeff and Sarah. Enjoy the rest of your evening, everyone." Marion says, "Thank you, Jeff and Sarah, for a great show." And Thomas had a question here. He just says, that's going to be interesting in the next election, how much China will play a part in it. I think they will play as much a part in it as they possibly can. It's really just a question of whether they're so good at this that we wouldn't be able to overwhelm them with, just look at the polls right now. But then again, like they control both sides, right? To a degree. I think it's really more the liberal side that is the most troubling right now. But you better believe that they've got a hand in both pots.
Absolutely.
Thomas is also saying, "Great show, guys. Thank you." And Good Think is saying, "Thank you, Jeff and Sarah. Awesome information sharing." And Thomas says, "Roger that, Jeff." All right, Thomas. My pleasure, brother. I think that's about covers it, guys. Thanks everybody for tuning in. And Sarah, I really appreciate this conversation. Like you got a lot of valuable information to share with us here. And man, oh man, are you ever on the right side of history? It's really great to talk with you. So I hope you'll come back sometime soon.
Thank you so much. And right back at you. Honestly, this was a great interview. The questions were kind of different. So I liked it. It kind of got me thinking. Thank you.
Yeah, good. It's because it's all improv. I don't write anything down. I just try to have a conversation with people, and I find it leads to kind of better places like that when it's a little unstructured and we have some freedom to explore these ideas. So
absolutely, thank you.
Enjoyed it, and enjoy the rest of your evening. And to everybody who tuned in, Stay frosty and stay safe out there. Oh, you know what? I just screwed off my tagline. Hang on. Here we
Won't
go.
you help to sing these songs of freedom? It's all I ever have. Redemption songs.